Before I can mount an exterior light on the other side of this wall, I need to find power for it, which leads me down to this outlet. This originally had a faceplate, gasket, and this duplex plug. Removing all that revealed 3 wires. Don't worry, circuit is off. I have a neutral, I have black carrying power, and then I have red, which turns out to be a ground wire. I didn't put it in. Anyway, so what I need to do is I need to expand this by putting a switch over here or a switch here and the outlet over here. So I have to gang 2 boxes. This is metal. I only have wires coming in from the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out and put a 2 gang box here, take this box out. So I'm going to put this in its place, which will allow me to put in a light switch, a plug, and a plate to match. Here's a very crude drawing trying to demonstrate what we're trying to do here. We have a cable coming in. It has a ground, it has a power lead, and it has a neutral. For a device to work, we need to complete a circuit where the power comes in and goes back out as a neutral. Otherwise, the device will not work. So we have, first thing I hook up is ground. So we have ground coming in, and it hooks up to the plug outlet, and it also hooks up to the switch, which has a ground. Then we have power coming in. Again, we tap off to the plug, and then we run a wire over to the switch, which means that now when this switch is closed, power goes up to the light, comes back down, then we need a neutral. So we have a neutral that's coming in. We connect to that neutral. The plug also needs a neutral, so we run a wire to that neutral. So everything has a way of where power comes in, goes through the device, and comes back out via a neutral. And thus we complete a circuit. We all make sure everything is grounded, everything has power, everything has a neutral, and none of the wires are crossed. And this is, in simplistic forms, what we just need to accomplish to get this light to work and to always have constant power here. And this switch only operates this light, and this is always hot. The challenge in removing the box is that it is nailed into a stud that sits here. There's a nail there, and there's one up on top. So I can approach this one of several ways. I can get a hacksaw blade in there, or maybe a jigsaw blade, and cut that nail between this wall and this plate. I can try using like a small crowbar, cat's paw I believe they call this, and try to rip out the box. I can cut out for the second box and then use that space to leverage this box out, because it is nailed in this way, so I might be able just to pull out those nails. What I'm trying to avoid is damaging this, because this is plywood, so it's not easy to repair if you put a big gouge in it. So I think I'm gonna go with cutting out for the new box and then seeing how I can get this out without destroying everything and making more work for myself. Once I have that opening, I'll be able to drill on the other side of the wall through the brick, drop the wire between the brick and this, and hopefully it will appear here. I will pull that wire, and then I can use this power not only to feed the plug side, but also to feed the switch that will power the light. It's important to note that the height of this box from here to the bottom there, not the ears, is 3 3/4, whereas the height from here to here is 3. So I've traced out the box, and you see I'm going to have to go a little larger to fit that box into the hole we're about to make. So just a word of caution, don't just take this number and move over. You really have to check against what you're using to replace it. And maybe the fiberglass one's a little different, maybe the metal one's a little different, but it's always good to just measure and double check. We have the area that we need to cut out marked. I've taped a bag to catch all the debris so it doesn't end up all over the floor. I'm going to use a jigsaw to hopefully cut this out, and then I'll probably have to make a turn to come up this way. This is all hollow, so I know there's no wiring here. There is wiring over here, but that's going up and down, so there's no pipes, no wires, so I'm good to cut there. I put some painter's tape on the bottom of the plate of the jigsaw, hoping that I can prevent from damaging this paint. I'm also using a very fine-tooth blade because this is very thin paneling, and I want as fine a cut as I can get. If I go with too rough of a blade, I can probably just start tearing and splintering the paint out, the wood out, and I don't want that. Just completed our first cut, and as you can see, it's very smooth and clean, so a good choice of blade. I'm not seeing any damage to the paint, so I think the painter's tape on the skid plate here is actually working well for us. In order to be able to make a cut horizontally and down, I either have to be able to curve the cutting blade around a corner, which is pretty hard to do with this jigsaw, or I can drill a hole and then cut down and across. The spade I'm using is 3/4 inch, so I came down 3/4, over 3/4, drew an X. That gives me the center point. That's where my 3/4 spade is going in, and that should give me a circle that's within the borders, and it'll allow me to jigsaw this way and vertically. We've drilled out our hole, and now we're ready to come in with the jigsaw and make our vertical cut. As we completed the top cut, the piece of plywood dropped out. We can see inside there's a little bit of insulation, a barrier, and then the brick wall is on the other side. Now I can see the nail heads on this box, and perhaps I can remove those with this little tool here, and then I can just get that box out of the way. And then I can finish doing this cut and check the sizing to make sure that I haven't cut this box too small. Better to cut it too small than to cut it too large. Using a hammer, I was able to get underneath the nail head, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's coming out. This nail has been in here for over 40 years, and pretty soon it'll be out and I'll be able to take out this box. I'm going to do the same thing to the nail that's located right back there. And then this box will come out. With both nails out, the box is free. It got bent a little bit in the process, so you can decide to either chuck the box or maybe repurpose it for some other project. But now we have our opening. Cutting this will be a piece of cake. Then I can check dimensions. So I went back and forth a couple of times with the jigsaw blade, just trimming out a blade's thickness so that the box fits in there nicely. It's flush to the back, to the wings. So now we're ready to actually bring in our wiring, split it out. This is a big accomplishment because now at least I have a place to bring those wires down to, and I have an opening which I can use to pull that line that's coming down from the exterior light. A thing to note about these boxes, they look like they have knockouts, but you don't knock these out. You just break the connection here from the body to the bottom of this tab, and there's an indentation so you can like push through with a screwdriver or sometimes even with your finger. And then you're just going to push the cable past this, and because it's at an angle, if you pull back on it, the cable won't pull out because this will hold it in place. So you don't want to break it off. If you break it off, you defeat the whole purpose of having this here. So the correct way to have this mounted is you see the cables coming in, the black sheath on it. It's going through the clamp, getting caught on the other side. You can see it back there. And then you bring your wires through. Since this wire has to service both the plug and the switch, I need to split it off. And I could use wire nuts, but instead I'm going to use these push wire connectors. So I can go in with the hot and then come back out to the plug and come back out to the switch. Same with the neutral. Come back out to the switch, come out to the plug, and I could even use it on the ground if I wish. And the wiring that I'm going to use to make that connection is just some 12-2 that I have here. I'm just going to pull it out of the sheath and cut it down to size. It's just a piece of scrap wire from another project, but it's appropriate gauge wiring for this project. The trick to using these push wire connectors is to run the bare wire from the bottom to the tip, which is about 3/4 of an inch, without exposing the wire on the outside. You want the insulation to be flush. You take your connector, insert the stripped wire, and you see how the insulation just mates up to the back. And when you look inside, that copper should be right up against the tip of this. Now you do that for the other black wires that are going to enter on this connector. Then you'll do the same for a neutral, and if you want, you don't want to use wire nuts, you can do the same thing for the ground. This is the electrical box that I'm going to try to use in the brick. Here's our bracket. I make sure that at least 2 screw holes are able to attach to the guide here. So I can go there, and that'll secure this bracket to the box, and then I can secure the fixture to the bracket. This one's used, so I have an opening where I can bring wire in, or I can use the clamps. I will probably use the clamps since I'm using some Romex. I have a very wide overhang, which is nice, which means chances of getting much water here, unless it's wind-driven rain, very small. That's a good thing. I'm looking to put the box right here. It gives me enough clearance from the studs, and I should be able to go somewhere in here. So what I'm going to do is put the box this way, mark it with a pencil, and then I'm going to use an SDS drill to put some holes in here. Then I'm going to chisel those holes out, and hopefully we won't damage any of the mortar or surrounding brick. This is my SDS drill hammer. It'll also do chisel and straight drilling in addition to the hammer drilling. Powerful tool, includes an aux handle. I have a video on how to properly use that handle. And a depth gauge. Depth gauge is important because when you're drilling, you don't want to pop through the backside and explode out the back of the brick. So depth gauge helps you control how far in you're going. And how do you set that if you don't know how deep the brick is? The way to set your depth gauge is to find a corner brick, and that'll show you how deep the brick is. See, because this is the side of the brick. So now all you have to do is adjust your depth gauge from the front of the chuck so that you don't drill past the backside and blow that out. I'm using this bit set from Bosch. It includes a nice big drilling bit for going into brick and also a chisel I might be able to utilize. Because there's silica in brick, and that's a very fine material that can get into your lungs and scar and just do a lot of damage, We want to protect ourselves from that. N95 mask is ideal. You also want to wear safety glasses. Because we're using a power tool, you'll want to wear gloves, hearing protection, and you also want to make sure that you're using that tool properly. We've drilled holes into the brick, and now we're ready to chisel that out. This is the fine powder that came off the brick, and this is the stuff you don't want to inhale. I use a 3/8 inch drill bit to bore holes. Then I use a 3/4 inch chisel bit to knock everything out and get it nice and clean. There's an obstruction back here. It measures about 4.5, almost 5 inches. I know it's 10 inches from this wall to the other wall, 3.5 inches from that wall to the fiberglass insulation. This is probably a piece of plywood, so I'm going to have to drill a hole through this so that when I feed the cable, I can go down and get it down to the outlet, which is down here somewhere. Time to get a drill driver with a bit that can go through wood. Using a 1-inch bit, I don't know if you could see it, but there's a hole back there. And there's fiberglass coming through it. So now I know I can fish wire down through that and get it to my outlet. I decided not to feed the wire down the wall from the outside, but instead to use my snake. Send it through the hole. I know it's about 3 feet down. And sure enough, make sure you de-energize this circuit. When I came down 3.5 feet, there was the other end of my snake. So all I have to do is attach my cable to this and then just pull up and out. On my 12-2 Romex, I've attached it to the snake, wrapped a little bit of electrical tape. I basically took 2 of the wires and just tied it around the snake and then just taped it so that there's a smooth entry as it goes up. So hopefully it won't get hung up on anything inside the wall. By pushing up on this cable while pulling down on the snake, I was actually able to get it to come out. Didn't have any issues with obstruction or anything. Now I'm going to leave about maybe a foot or so I can play around with that piece of wire. Come down here, do the same. Thinking of taking this outlet and actually moving it here so that when you're at this doorway, the first thing you can hit is the switch as opposed to a plug. All depends on how much wire I have feeding this. If I can easily move that over, I will. Here we are with the box in position. I've caulked. It's a mortar caulk that I'm using. I had to, you see there's a screw way in the back. I had to put in a long screw so that it had something to bite into so it wouldn't shake around. So somehow you're gonna have to secure your box to woodwork or to brick. It was much easier to do it to woodwork. So now I'm gonna let this dry, and in the meantime I can wire up the switch and the outlet. Meanwhile, back at the box, I've disconnected the outlet. We're gonna push that over. I'm gonna bring in my new Romex underneath this clamp here. So I'll have wire coming out here, and then we will tap off the power to the switch. That'll go up the line to the light, come back down from the light, and then we will feed the neutral side, which will be on this push connector here. And of course, we'll make our ground connection. With all the connections completed, you put the outlet back in, the switch, you get your cover plate back on, and it should look something like this. We still don't energize this circuit because we got to finish the work outside. Having finished with the outlet and switch, we come back up here, and all I've done is I've taken the bracket and attached it with 2 screws. You may have to cut down the length of the screws because depending on how much space you have beyond the bracket. I didn't have much, so I cut these. These were like 1-inch screws, and I really cut them down. on some of your wire cutting tools, there are, you see those little holes here and here? Sometimes screws will fit in there and allow you to do a clean cut. Anyway, so now all we have to do at this point is strip the wire here, connect to the wire from the fixture, then shove those wires back in there, slide the fixture on this lip, and there are 2 screws that go in here, and that's what holds the fixture to this bracket. I added some tile and tub silicone around the sides and top, nothing on the bottom, so in case something does get back there, it will come out. Also put a little bit of silicone where the screws are going to go so that there's some additional protection there, sort of a mini gasket. Now it's time to use the wire nuts that are included with the kit and wire these up, shove them inside, then slide the unit on. Here's what it looks like with the screws in. This will be kind of difficult because you can't see the hole that you're putting the screw into, or at least I couldn't. I don't have that much clearance. And you're either going left or right or out or in to try to get that alignment to work for you. Of course, once you get one of the screws in, the second one's a little bit easier. With the fixture mounted, all that's left to do is to put this up the glass inside, screw it into position, and that's supposed to give it a nice glow. You can do this before or after you install it. I just decided to go after because it's more of a challenge. Once the outside fixture has been connected and mounted, then we can energize this circuit and we're ready to flip on the light. If you found this video interesting or useful, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, join the subscription team, and as always, thank you ever so much for watching.